Do you ever want to just outsource everything? I know what that's like. As I'm recording this, I'm thinking of everything I want to outsource. And I've outsourced multiple things before, but I've failed. Admittedly, I've failed because I was unable to find the time to really document the process. And that's really cumbersome because you know it better than anyone else. And I'm not just talking about scheduling things on your calendar that an assistant could do. I'm talking about video editing for me, or setting up the podcast, on its host site, and then making sure it's on WordPress, and then that's updated, and that there's an intro like this and an outro like you'll hear at the end. There's so many different facets. Now, whatever business you're in, there's things that you truly believe that you have to be doing, and you just are going to lack the patience to wait for someone to do it right or better or whatever it may be. And the problem is you start veering off the path, and the path should be towards scaling. And you might be scaling while you're trying to scale, but ultimately that fizzles out because you are going to be inundated with all the new things coming on, and customer service, customer success, productivity, quality. Everything that you could think of that goes into a business and how you want it to evolve and succeed. You can scale, but at some point you're going to be behind the more you're involved. I'm a huge proponent of outsourcing, and I've done it many times. And now I'm embarking on a new journey where I'm hiring a team. Now, I got introduced to Robert Nickell, who's a former real estate investor in Dallas, who was able to successfully manage just a great portfolio until he wasn't able to because of what we just talked about. There is that critical point where you actually need the help and you have to give up control. And this is a recurring theme in entrepreneurship and solopreneurship for sure. But I had him on because he runs a company of virtual assistants in which you are able to outsource numerous business processes, including process mapping everything that you haven't documented yet, which is exactly what I talked about earlier. So keep this in mind. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Robert Nickell is the CEO of Rocket Station, where you could outsource all of your business processes. And remember, Rich Cardona Media is the sponsor for this podcast, where we film, edit, and distribute video content specifically for LinkedIn, but content you could use anywhere else you'd like as well. We are a done-for-you service because I know how tough it is to keep up with content of my own because of everything else going on in the business. I know many of you are in the same boat and would just be relieved to know that you can record for less than an hour a month with us, have a month's worth of content that will be distributed, edited, and then distributed for you. And then you don't have to worry about it. But you do have to engage with the people that engage with you. So that is something we can't do and that you should do. And that will lead to more prominence in your thought leadership or business development or lead generation, all of the above. You can email Eliza, Eliza, at richcardonamedia.com if interested. Let's get to the show. Hey everyone, so you just heard the intro and I got my guest here and I'm really excited. I told him I would do the intro so he wouldn't have to give me his biography. But Robert, can you please introduce yourself and tell me what your company is and what they do in 60 seconds or less?
Yeah, Robert Nickell, CEO, founder of Rocket Station. We are an outsourcing provider. We really are a two-trick pony. We do system and process development. So that is your training, development, videos, everything that happens in the day-to-day business. We like to itemize that and create training manuals with that. So there's a lot of transparency into what's happening into your business. And then the other thing we do is dedicated virtual teams. So from inside sales to accounting and bookkeeping to administrative tasks, or what some people call virtual assistants or administrative assistants. We are dedicated virtual teams.
Got it. So look, I just right before we started chatting and I pressed record, I was talking to you about the fact that, I really wish I would have thought about outsourcing a little bit earlier. I wouldn't say I was late, but I realized that the value is there. But I want to go into systems and processes right off the bat. Before this, I worked at Amazon and I was an operations guy. It was all about systems and processes and metrics and, improvement and everything, right? So when it comes to that, as an entrepreneur, I'm curious as to the manner in which you help. Meaning, do people need you to help develop the process, refine the process, or what do you see is the glaringly obvious, oh my gosh, we can help you right now?
Most of the time, what we see, it's pretty standard across the board for all of us. We all have a pretty similar journey in that we know our business end to end for the most part. And there's not usually a task, a department, anything that's happening in the day to day where we don't feel like we could be the best ambassador for our company to be able to perform those tasks. So we all have to go through that process at our own speed. So and at the end of the day, it makes a lot of sense to have a little bit of anxiety around what's happening with every single thing that's going on in the business. It totally makes sense to have some fear every time the phone rings that call is answered correctly, whether it's a sales call or a customer support call, because your sales call is the lifeblood of your business, and keeping and retaining customers is what it's all about once they come in, right? So having some anxiety about how everything's done totally makes sense. So the way most entrepreneurs and businesses leverage us is not to understand systems and processes. It's not understanding what needs to be done in the business. It's really just taking a step back, being able to look at your business from a little bit different perspective, because when you're in it every single day, like Rich, if I called you at the end of today and I said, hey man, how was your day? You'd say, it's great. It was great. I crushed it. I killed it. I got a ton of things done. I see your board, all the things we talked about, the million things you've got going on back there, right? And I said, okay, well, what'd you do today? You'd say, what do you mean? I did tons of things. My day was full. But if I would have to keep pressing you to ask you what you actually, you'd have to think about it. It's like when I pick up my 3-year-old nephew from his preschool and I ask him what he did that day, it's like I have to pull it out of him because we're all so busy and we're getting through our day. We know what we're doing. We know how to do it. Very rarely do we stop, think about what we're doing, the processes we're going through. We just kind of get through it, and we've got a lot to do and our schedules are busy. So we're not there to tell you how to run your business. We're not there to tell you anything that you don't really already know. But what we are is a sounding board. We're experts in systems and process and automation, and there's not a software or a process that we haven't seen or developed at this point. And so what we are is, one, we're a great sounding board to just go through and evaluate your systems and processes and see if there's any opportunity for efficiency or automation, number one. And then number two is very few companies of any size have their daily structure written down. So most of what you do, you probably know because it's in your head. And it's same with every entrepreneur that comes through. Very little is written down. So when they answer the phone, they know how to answer the phone. They know what to say. But then to ask them how to train someone else, or to ask them what, exactly to do, it's this big overwhelming thing to create training because we know what to do, but to stop and create those processes and those things, it's a really hard thing for entrepreneurs to do. So that's what we do. We take everything that's inside your head, Rich, we pull it out, we put it a beautiful format, whether that's video or we've all seen the really amazing step-by-step system processes where you see everything that's happening for every single thing. And why do we do that? Do you need to know every single step? No, but when we pull it out of your head, Rich, now we've got structure that other people can stand on, and then leverage is possible. And now all of a sudden we can grow and we can get more done, and hiring people becomes a whole lot easier. So for us, that system and process is the foundation. It's where we start. We require everyone to go through that process with us, no matter where you are, because that's what creates transparency. That's what creates alignment. That's what allows you to take everything out of your head, put it down. And then sometimes it's like, man, I was doing a bunch of things I probably shouldn't have been doing or had certain processes in place just because I was getting through. We never really take a step back to think about what we're doing because we're just crushing our day and we're getting through it. We're so busy. And at the end of the day, we've got to just get things done.
Yes.
Right. So for systems and processes, what we do is we just, if I can, I've been talking too much here, monologuing about it, but what we do is we just take what's in your head and create a really pretty format so that other people can take what's in your head and do it exactly the way you want that done.
This is making me laugh because we've had so many different 1099s come in, and it has made me, someone who's a former Marine, a retired Marine, question my ability to communicate and my leadership. And the last go we had was someone who was fantastic. And the reason they were fantastic was because I made the 16 slide bullshit Canva step-by-step, everything with pictures and arrows. And if you see this, then do this. And what everyone has been telling me for a while now is that you have to document every single thing that you do. Now, let me ask you this question. Everything you said completely makes sense, but why do entrepreneurs like me or you or whoever else, like, why do we feel like that can wait? Like, what is it that makes us say, that can wait, and I'm sure I'm the only one who could do this?
Yeah, a couple things. I think it logically kind of makes sense as entrepreneurs because one, part of who we are, part of our inner drive is to keep moving, progress, move forward. So to spend time, and it takes considerable time to document everything and to confirm it. Because once you document, it doesn't mean you document it well, because trying to execute what you just documented, like sometimes like it makes sense to you, but if you gave it to someone else, it wouldn't make sense. So it takes, so to slow down, I think for us entrepreneurs, there's something inside of us that just naturally, it feels like lack of progress. It feels like, oh, we can't slow down because we've got other more important things to do, which, at the very beginning, if you don't have much of a business and there's not much going on, that might be okay. That
Sure.
might be true. But as soon as there's any level of complexity whatsoever, you absolutely have to document it. But why are we so hesitant to let that go? Well, if you work as hard as you do, and you work as hard as I do, and I know everybody listening, I know how hard they're working and the effort that they put in, the amount of energy and exhaustion that it takes to run a business, the thought of handing some of those things off to someone who may not perform it as well as you, that task as well as you think it should be performed, that is an emotionally overwhelming, exhausting, fear-inducing. I mean, that it totally makes sense, right? Because we have put so much of our life into creating our business to then give it to someone to go screw up. I don't know about you, but that sounds terrible.
You're right on. And let me tell you what it is. It's the knowledge. It's not even instinctual. This is like matter of fact. Like, no one is going to care about your business more than you. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, no one's going to wake up and be thinking about it. People will be, if they do work for the business, they'll be thinking like, oh, I got work today and I got to think about what I got to do. I'm thinking about what I have to do, what I have to do 5 years from now, who I got to talk to today, what can I get off my plate? Am I over delivering for my clients? Am I charging enough? Am I undercharging? I mean, there's all this, the enormity of the things that you think about are so much. So when you're saying it's emotionally exhausting, it's probably because I think we approach it cynically. Like, there's a level of pessimism associated with it. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but why can't we, or how can we, I guess is a better question.
Here's what I think. Okay, here's what I think. All of us get into business not for the business, right? I started in real estate. I was investing and flipping in houses and learned wholesaling. That's where I really learned and understood the power of leverage. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book we've all read, and I thought I understood leverage, but until you go apply those principles until you try to go build a business yourself. You don't really get it. So how do we get there, and how do we solve that problem? It's absolutely about just staying focused on why we're doing it, right? And so what I was going to say is, none of us, I didn't get into real estate because I was necessarily passionate about real estate. Real estate is a vehicle, it's a tool. There's other things in my life that I care about. I was building a business because I wanted to be a better son. I wanted to be a better uncle to my nephews. I want to be able to have some freedom to spend my life and doing the things that I actually care about. I think that's why most of us as entrepreneurs get into businesses, because we have these hopes, dreams, and aspirations of a better life that we want to create for ourselves and our families. My clients, they want to be better dads. They want to be better husbands. They want to go on vacation and have more money in the bank when they come back than they did when they left. Right? Like, that's what they want. And our businesses is the vehicle to get us the life that we want. And so I think that's why the emotional toll, I think that's where it comes from, is because our business is just a reflection of who we are, where we're trying to go. Right? I think for most of us, that's because it's like we care about the business, but we care about our families. We care about our life. We care about what the business can provide us. And so the idea of then destroying that business by doing something wrong and then it damaging our opportunity for a better life, I think that's where the anxiety comes from. And I think it just needs to be a reframing of that. And what, for me personally, I have to experience things. I can read it all the time, but I have to experience it. So in real estate, it was all about marketing enough to get the phone to ring so that I could find the opportunity in real estate. And that was the business that I learned, that I had to be sitting at the kitchen table signing contracts to either get a listing sign in the front yard. This is 2008 and 9 when I was just getting into real estate, or to get an investment deal. I had to negotiate a price and get a contract where I could get contractors in the next day. I was going to be able to do a deal. So to run my business, I had to market, the phone had to ring, I had to do all the analysis, I had to get the financing. There's all these things that had to get done. And so for myself, I had a hard cap on what I was able to do, Rich, because I did everything myself. So for me, that was about 3 real estate transactions a month. Okay. And real estate was just this vehicle to provide me this better life. But what ended up happening was now I'm working 80 hours a week in the real estate business and not living the life that I was supposed to live, because I was just doing every single thing myself. Right. And so the first person, well, to be totally candid with you, I didn't hire virtually at first. I tried Craigslist. I tried friends and family. I tried bringing people into my office. None of it worked, right? No. It wasn't good at all. And I did not have enough structure. So once we created that process of being able to create systems and document processes, right, then I understood where my real pain points were. And that was mostly, like Rich, I told you, I need to be sitting we all have different things we need to be doing to generate revenue in our business, right? For me, that was getting contracts, doing deals. And so, but in order to do that, the phone was ringing and there was research that had to be done. And so the first time I hired somebody to answer the phone from those mortgage, I was so nervous and I was freaking out. And I'm listening to every one of their calls and it's like nails on a chalkboard, me listening to them and they're ripping. I'm like, oh no, they sound terrible. And I'm like freaking out, right? But then Rich, this amazing thing happened. I was getting more appointments and I was able to get more contracts because someone else was answering the phone.
Yes.
And it was this weird thing that happened. I was like, even if they screw up a couple calls, which I didn't want them to screw up any calls. I didn't want them to screw up anything ever. But even if they did, I was doing more deals, making more money, and the business was growing, even with somebody doing it not as well as I was doing it. So for me, I wish I could say, oh, just principally, I understood these concepts and I just went and applied it right out the gates from 2008 when I started my first business. And that's why we are where we are today. I was just successful right out the gate. No, I had to go learn these concepts of leverage. I felt that same anxiety and fear as everyone else. But by applying and having some people help me, what I realized was my business was only going to be as good and as big as the people that I surrounded myself with. Yep. If it was just me, my business was only going to be as big and as good as I was. And I thought I was pretty talented, but working 80, 90 hours a week and only making so much money, like that to me was not the life that I was going for. And so by adding in some support, adding in some help and doing that the right way, it just totally changed my life. And then the business put me on a trajectory to have the life that I was actually looking to have. So I know that's a too long-winded answer,
No,
but
no, no,
that's
not
what
at
I
all.
think is kind of the steps to overcome that anxiety of giving up some of those tasks.
It's funny. There's this a meme I saw years ago when entrepreneurship or starting a business was kind of like a flickering light bulb in my head. And the meme said, entrepreneurs are the only people who would quit an 80-hour a week job for a 120-hour a week job, and for less pay probably in the beginning. And I thought that was funny. But
Definitely.
I think what you said about people doing it maybe not as good as you, but it's still leading to revenue and business growth is really important, because I think our flaws really start to come out the more we don't decide to outsource. Like whatever chinks there are in your armor, you're just not going to be able to perform everything well. And obviously, I'm really kind of big on the visionary integrator kind of roles there are. But let me ask you this. I'm in this place right now personally, and I'm saying this because I'm sure there's other entrepreneurs out there in the same boat where I am definitely in the business in places where I don't need to be. I'm planning on, delegating, and we're planning on making like a big hire here soon. But there needs to be space to educate yourself. I mean, you were talking about market analysis and we're talking about real estate, but we could talk about any business. But there has to be a level of increasing education and exposure to concepts that you don't know, or else you will just be leaning into your expertise, which there's nothing wrong with. But if you're not evolving, then the business is just going to look the same in a year. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to, I said that no one can do anything better than you. I think that is just a false narrative that we tell ourselves as the entrepreneur, because what happens pretty quickly when you hire really talented people is you realize that nobody can do certain things better than you, right? There's a handful of things, and a handful is probably even pushing it. There's two or three things max that I am truly the best in our organization. And that may even be overstepping it, because when you look at all the things, you mentioned visionary, I play more of that role. I try to
Same.
play more of the visionary role than integrator in my business. When I try to step into the integrator role, I'm not as good as people who are talented integrators at fulfilling that. So we have on the operations side people as integrators that they function a little bit different than, say, like our sales team, who are driven by, motivated and driven just a little bit differently, a little bit different type of person. So, I mean, I kind of humor the conversation around nobody can do it better than you, but I just think that's honestly a totally false narrative. I just say that so people will continue to listen, because if I just jump in and say that's absolutely not true, people tune me out right out the gates. But it's just not true. It's just a false narrative we tell ourselves. And the truth is, the workforce is amazingly talented. I think as entrepreneurs, we tell ourselves too that finding good people is hard. And that is true, because it's a process, and you have to have a process to be able to find talented people and have them be successful. I mean, it's not easy to go through that process, but there is absolutely super talented, amazing people out there.
Let's talk about that.
Do lots of your business better than you.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Like finding talented people. I really believe that's something people just don't believe. Like in the beginning stages of business, I always am trying to be that person that preaches like, just pay yourself last. Like just make sure you have your necessities taken care of. But it's not about, it's not about getting new things. It's about reinvesting in the business, and more importantly, reinvesting in people, which will help you scale the business. Now, you said it's hard to find talented people. What happens when you're in a situation where you can't make what is, in your opinion, a formidable offer to someone of the talent that you want? And they don't have to be like you. We've already kind of covered that, but someone who could substantially bring value and help take a lot off your plate. How do you go about that? And how do you go about that when maybe you don't have the capital to give them what they probably need?
Yeah, so I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we get overwhelmed and we have all these things. So the first hire that we oftentimes try to make, or the first couple hires, is basically to have like a right hand, or in some way we want this like equal in our minds, right? Where they're not a partner, they're not going to get any equity, but we want them to come in and just be able to run with things. And so then we think of like having to have a big title, a big paycheck, this massive thing, like contractually going to have to figure this out. Now, am I an HR Like, am I now having to figure out HR, right? So I think that's also usually a mistake, because most businesses, before they need those super big expensive hires, what they need is their day to day. What they need is a really good customer experience, whether it's on the front end before they become clients, or it's customer support once they become an account for you, once they become a client. So we have clients, that partners of ours, that are software companies that build these amazing softwares that their net promoter scores are low. And it has nothing to do with the ability of the software. It's just the client's ability to use the software effectively and get to their goals and outcomes. So we come in and we are able to, just by doing high level one support, walkthrough, being there for people to be able to answer questions, all of a sudden the net promoter score and the lifetime expectancy of these clients is going through the roof, because there's some engagement in customer support. And that's not a super expensive hire, but when the phone is ringing, somebody needs to answer it. When the emails are coming through, they need to be responded to. And you put a chat bot on your website. I mean, ultimately, it's not really worth anything unless there's somebody behind it at some point that's going to engage. And so I think that usually the first step, the first couple hires, is the first thing you need to do is either by yourself or work with someone like us, is to map out your systems and processes, map out what's happening in the day to day. And in that process, what you'll understand is that there's many things that you're doing throughout the day that are absolutely not the highest and best use of your time. It's just an absolute fact that there will be things that you should not necessarily be doing yourself. And if you document those things, then you usually can get a huge percentage of the daily tasks, the ancillary tasks that are important, that have to be done, that are necessary, but aren't mission critical and have to have your 2 cents and your brain power on every single thing. It's just people inquiring about your business or engaging with your website or whatever it takes to build your business. In e-commerce, we have it all the time. Like, people want to build a fully automated e-commerce platform. The e-commerce platforms that are crushing are the ones that provide some customer support and answer the phone if somebody calls. And so those e-commerce stores don't need to hire a big expensive COO. They need to hire a customer support team, an inside sales team to grow the business. So my opinion, Rich, is companies get to the point where they can afford the big titles and those big people to come in and take on the huge roles once you have a stable platform that's making some money. And then you're going to attract a higher level C-suite person because you've got a proven model. So the first step, usually, in my opinion, is to not hire super expensive people. It's, let's document your systems and processes. Let's create some structure. Then let's get the right team in place. I mean, we're $10 an hour. Flat fee. It's not even an independent contractor. It's a service provider that can do every single one of these tasks that we talked about, from administrative tasks to inside sales to bookkeeping to customer support to your social media management. I mean, you can hire super high level talented people at $10 an hour. There's really no excuse to not have those things done. That's what grows the business. As the business grows, you get some revenue, you got some capital. Now you can reinvest in maybe a C-suite level team, maybe some higher level technology infrastructure, maybe some of those things. But usually sales and customer support is what changes a business, not having super expensive high level employees.
Yeah, we've talked about the overwhelm. We've talked about, the mental energy and the exhaustion on the actual business owner. But tell me the risks for the business itself when these things start to get flooded, and when delegation is not happening, when outsourcing is not happening, and when documentation is not taking place.
Oh man, I see all these things all the time. Like, if I send someone an email and I get these auto-generated responses, like, I check my emails at this time, and I'll respond to you in a week if you're lucky between these hours. And I'm like, are you Warren Buffett? I mean, like, how important can you be? Right. And to me, it's not, you're not showing me how impressive you are. You're showing how, like, either you need to put more systems and processes, something in place. I mean, this entire booking to get onto this show, Marianne, my assistant, she ran that whole thing. And I think it looked like I was engaged in that process to get here. But really, at the end of the day, I saw that this was booked. I spent some time to get prepared,
Mm-hmm.
watch some of your shows, make sure I understand who you are and your background so I can try to provide as much value as possible. But I wasn't involved in scheduling that and preparing. And our mutual friend Jeremy Knopf that set it up, like that was all done through Marianne, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to do any of that stuff. So that to me is like you've got to get out of that exhaustion mode by getting things off of your plate that you shouldn't be doing in the day to day. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question
No, so
specifically,
let
but
me rephrase it. So the business as a whole, what do you start to see fall apart? Like what are some indicators that you are really headed to a bad place because you have
oh
failed?
yeah, I'm sorry, I totally missed your
No,
question,
no, no,
and
you're good.
that's an awesome question. It makes all the sense in the world. I mean, I've personally felt that anxiety going to bed at night and feeling like there's too many things that are happening and I'm not in control of everything and there's emails I need to respond to and text messages are piling up. And honestly, for me, and I don't know how to speak for anyone else's experience, but I'll speak for the experience that I had. It became pretty obvious that I needed help once I was dropping the ball, and it was just so obvious that I was the bottleneck. There was complaints coming through about my lack of response time, not getting back with you. And it's embarrassing to say, and I've come a long ways since then, but I used to think that I had to control everything. And what became for Rich, for me, it was just so glaringly obvious when I'm getting text messages with people saying, "Hey, I sent you an email. Why haven't you responded?" And there's all these things happening. And the only time the ball was dropping was on me,
Yeah.
right? And I would miss emails, I would miss things, right? So, and to be totally candid with you, I missed personal events and things would slip in my personal life because I would get so chaotic at work and I had so many things going on that I was dropping the ball at home. And for me, like waking up one day and saying, "Man, like I'm screwing up at
Yeah.
work," which is dragging over at home. Like it, to me, my personal experiences, it just, I was the bottleneck. People were letting me know that consistently, and I wasn't able to grow or fulfill the business in the way that we really want. I essentially wasn't keeping the promises that I was making and we were making as a company because I was dropping the ball. That's when I had to have a wake up call and say, I'm not good in my personal life, and the business isn't going to be able to survive.
When you discovered what you needed, I always believe that people who acutely feel something themselves are able to solve that problem for other people. So tell me about how you decided to be like, I'm going to solve this for a lot of other people than me because I see the value in it.
Yeah, that's exactly the creation of our of Rocket Station and why it exists. Is our mission is enhance lives through better business, and I just felt that if people went through these couple steps that I finally figured out, if you just go through this couple steps, then it's almost guaranteed success. Is it always easy? No, but if you just start by documenting systems and processes, because one, like I said, we all kind of know our business. And the reason we're entrepreneurs and we burn our boats and we go all in is because we believe in the business and we believe in what we're doing. I hope, or I don't think you should be doing what you're doing, right? So if we believe in the business, we got a strong business, we document our systems and processes. That is absolutely step one to being able to have any kind of momentum, any kind of growth whatsoever. And there, that creates the road. I almost think of it's like the bumpers in the bowling alley. If you
Yes.
have a script, now you've got structure. Those are the lines on the freeway that, you know, the fancy cars today that you can kind of take your hands off the wheel because they'll keep you inside the lines. I mean, those lines are your systems and processes, your structure, your boundaries, your rules. You don't have to create rules in an organization other than documenting systems and processes. There's the rules. That's how everything should work. That's how things should flow, right? So that helped me really understand my business. And I just looked around and no one had that. No one had any structure in how they would train people. We all had pain. We hire people. It's a disaster. We fire them, then we sit around at masterminds and meetings and group talks. It's like, hey, talk about how terrible it is to manage people and hire teams. And I was like, that is absolutely not the way it should be. So once I figured out I could document systems and processes, and Rich, I hired people to help me do that.
Yes.
And I tried to do it myself forever, but then at some point I hired someone to do it. I worked on it for 6 months by myself. It was terrible. I
So
hired
hold on a
somebody.
second. So you hired people to actually help you write the processes?
Oh yeah, to pull it all out of my head and create documents. Because what happened was I did my training videos and I documented the processes, and then nobody could do anything with them.
Yes.
I had to sit there and explain to
I've
people
been
the
there.
same way, just like over and over. And I was like, it takes me more time to train somebody and go through this process than it is just do it myself. So I had to get some help so I could create resources that were usable instead of just being like, oh, I want somebody to answer the phone and then throw them on, they're terrible. And then I write a script out that I thought was well written and then they used the script I wrote. And I'm like, it's just, I was a poor manager is what came down to. And there was no structure and there was no rules in place. So, and I looked around and none of my friends had it. Nobody had. So that was the first thing, is just required. I built a team that could do that really well and for free for a long time, Rich, for over 100 people. We did that for free. We just built their systems and processes and then just helped them find great virtual teams by just going through the process that we went through. And that first step was systems and processes. And then we created an awesome recruiting funnel. Right now, we're screening over 4,000 applications a month, and our company's hiring less than 2% of those people. So, I mean, what's one of the core functions of what we do is identifying the perfect people for these roles within organizations. But we had to create a machine to make that happen, because as entrepreneurs and business owners, what we really want is plug and play. Like if I need a bookkeeper, I want to be able to just plug somebody in there who's going to be a great bookkeeper. Our model is, if we can understand your business, if we can be aligned with you and what you're trying to accomplish, we will document your systems and processes and then give you 3, 4, 5 candidates to interview on a Zoom call just like this that are a perfect fit for that role. It is a done for you. That's what I wanted, Rich.
Yes.
I wanted that in my real estate business. I wanted that as I started to scale. There was companies out there that essentially promised that and made some big promises about essentially having that easy button to get roles done, and it didn't exist. And we all wanted it. I wanted it. And since 2013, that's been the mission. And we feel like we've done that better. We've created an amazing service that actually does that for people. If you Google us, you'll see over 100 Google reviews of people saying that exactly. And it's because for 7 years, we've perfected this process of documenting systems and processes. And my team in the Philippines, we have a massive infrastructure around recruiting and training so that our client partners can simply just get aligned with us. We have a discovery call, and then we can plug and play team members where they want to go. But you control and drive the bus, right? Like at the end of the day, it's your business. I want people you're excited about working in your business. So we'll give you 5, 6 options of people that are a great fit, or more if you don't like those candidates. But the idea is that you're going to interview, you're going to pick somebody that's a great fit. It's going to function exactly like an employee, but just a service agreement. We take all the HR liability, everything off of your plate. So we just created what I wanted. As a business owner, I wanted to have those things. I wanted my system processes done, and then I just wanted to have people in place that I knew were going to be rock stars. I wanted their background checks done. I wanted their drug screening. I wanted their resumes called. I wanted everything done on that huge list that we all know to go through, checklist of hiring, that none of us are willing to go through. I wanted that. And that's what we created. So that's why we did it. That's why I started this business, is because I felt like everyone needed this solution.
Let me ask, this is a question I've gotten so many times, and I have to admit, I have experienced it as well. The feeling that you need, especially for some of these, like I would say maybe an EA or someone who it just is going to be better in person versus remote. That the belief that you need physically to be able to see them, for them to see how you operate, watch you, listen to you, see how you take calls and all these different things. Like there seems to just be this inherent advantage. And there's people like you who are like, absolutely not, that's not required. So what is it that makes that true? Meaning that the virtual works, that these people can operate from half a world away and really crush it for you.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we have all kind of become more aligned in this since March of this year, and since we've been entered into this global pandemic. We, since 2013, have been telling people this is possible. And not only it's possible, but as a business operator, it's one of the best options that you can make for your business. And because of the pandemic, things that have happened, it's not just halfway across the world. Companies are having to figure it out in their local communities. There are
Yes.
employees that, I live here in Dallas, I can see all these skyscrapers outside. These are all commercial buildings that are empty, even to this day, right?
Yep.
And so everybody's almost overnight kind of figured out that it's totally possible to have a completely remote workforce, and it doesn't matter the role. Now, can you have someone remotely go pick up your dry cleaning and do shop for groceries? And well, kind of, Amazon offers some cool things. There's some services out there, but there may be some tangible things that you have to have somebody in the office for. But if you look at the most successful companies across the globe, and I like to look everything from, the big index companies from the Fortune 500s to the service providers that we all know and respect, they've been outsourcing and leveraging overseas teams for a long, long time, which is part of what's created some of the negative images of what outsourcing is and what overseas teams are, because we've all had some negative experience with overseas teams.
Yes.
What's changed about today is that technology's progressed so much. The tools are so advanced. The internet is amazing. The bridge has just been gapped. So instead of not being able to get the best talent, we can find the best talent. We can get amazing employees. We can create the system and infrastructure to be able to provide the experience that I think is equal. Now, and that includes culture for the most part, right? Because what I was going to say is now most people get all worked up about like, well, how do I create this remote culture? I'm big on culture and team, and coming from the Marines, no one's going to get that more than you, right? I would argue one of the most tight, closest guarded cultures that exist in the universe is what you guys have in the Marines. And it's amazing, right? But are you guys all together all the time? No way. Look at the military. I mean, talk about remote team, remote workforce with one of the most amazing cultures in the world. So we as a company, we just mimic the greatest organizations in the world. And we just wanted to provide what we view as the highest level world-class service down to the entrepreneur. We didn't think that you had to be a Dell Computers or a Microsoft to be able to have access to these resources, to be able to have access to amazing customer support teams or amazing bookkeeping teams or inside sales, and not have to pay pay these exorbitant rates to do it. We didn't feel like you had to be a Fortune 50 company to have some of these options. So it's not only possible, but technology has made it very, very doable. And then companies like ours take all the obstacles and all the things that make it hard, and we essentially hold your hand and do that for you. Now, Rich, if you want to go figure it out on your own, and I'm not going to pretend that it's easy. Okay, like if you want to build teams and just figure it out on your own, and it's going to be a learning curve. It's going to be a long learning process, but totally doable. If you reach out and get some help, I mean, clients of ours, they're up and running in a couple of weeks. From first discovery call to team members running at full capacity takes 3 to 4 weeks max. So, I mean, it's not only possible, but today, because of technology, where we are globally, the way the workforce is positioned, it's totally doable. The resources, I mean, Zoom, everybody's so sick of Zoom, but man, what an amazing resource and tool it is. Marianne, I mentioned her, executive assistant. She's on
great.
Essentially every single call that I'm on. She's a part of everything. She can work in my voice. I mean, it is as if she sits next to me. And pre-COVID, Rich, I was never in the office anyways. I mean, that's the truth of it. I was never there. I spent hundreds of thousands of miles on the road and flying. I was never in the office. So that it's just another false narrative we tell ourselves because it feels good, I think, to see somebody sit next to us, to have that tangible thing, to be able to fire off a few comments, be able to, hang up the phone and look over and, but is that necessary? Is it important?
Let me ask one final question then, and then I'll definitely ask where people could find you and where they could look the company up as well. But speed matters in business, and what we're talking about without overtly having talked about it, is the capacity to speed up what we're trying to do, the goals that we're trying to hit, the revenue that we're trying to increase, the brand that we're trying to create awareness for. With this and an overseas team potentially that you could bring on board, and obviously, like you mentioned, very affordable, completely comparable to the talent we could find here that we know we don't need next to us now through this interview. The issue of speed, because there is a time difference. So for someone like me who's obsessive about, okay, here's my deadline. Wait a second, but now I can't contact so-and-so until this, and then they're going to contact me while I'm sleeping. Tell me how someone like me could get over that and just really kind of capitalize on what a benefit it is and how it actually doesn't slow down the speed of your business.
Our teams work real time. So whatever your business hours are, even though they're across the globe, sitting in the Philippines, they still work your hours. So we're Central Standard Time here in Dallas. We have teams that work way outside of those hours because by the time start of day happens at 8 a.m. for our teams, all of our reports are in and we're ready to go. We're not waiting till 10, 11, noon to get reports and data from the day before, the week before, the monthly updates. We have our teams going. So we look at it as pretty much a 24/7 workforce. Yeah. And so it's a complete advantage in that way. So part of that discovery process with us is we will do a time study on exactly what's happening when in your business. So that's one of the concerns people have is, well, what if my phone's not ringing all the time? I only have so many emails coming in. And how do I structure these multitask jobs, right? The phone rings 10 times a day. What the heck else are they doing all day, right? Well, that's part of that structure that you put in place in the business. That's part of having systems and processes up front, right? It's like that is the real advantage of that. So firms like us pretty much eliminate those obstacles and the time difference. It's real time. They should work. And I'm not saying that's how it always works. If you go hire on your own, you can structure it however you want. But our teams work in real time. We think it's important to have that immediate response. And Rich, the goal is and how it functions, and the reason we have so many great Google reviews is because your entire sphere will have no idea your teams are in the Philippines. They will just assume they're sitting there. And one of my favorite stories is we went to Louisville, Kentucky, and we have a great service provider there that has a bunch of our team members. And there's a maintenance call where they've got a bunch of maintenance techs and teams on the road. Okay. And we were doing a team meeting. The guys came in, they needed a signature on something. And they were commenting and they were talking about one of the guys who said, oh, well, we need to go. Just tell him he did a great job on the service ticket. And we appreciate him. And they're like, no, you can't. They're like, no, he's here today because you were engaged. They're like, no, he's in the Philippines. So their company is so big and they had so much going on. They didn't even know a portion of their own team was across the globe in the Philippines because it just functions as if it's part of the process. And it is, right? It's just another team member in the day-to-day. Nobody should have any idea or really even think about them not being in your office, whether it's your team members for your company. It'll function just like they're sitting right there in your office. And then for whether it's your clients, whether it's your customers, whether it's prospective, your vendor partners, none of them will have any idea your teams are based in the Philippines. It'll be just like they're sitting right there in your office.
Got it. Well, look, for everyone listening, definitely, before I ask you where people can find you, the entire premise of this is the importance of business process outsourcing and someone who understands it intricately and has been able to effectively build a team, an army, so to speak, of people who can do it for you. The reluctance does not need to exist, and that is exactly why we had this podcast. So you're a small to medium-sized business, then you're definitely going to want to connect with Robert. And that being said, Robert, where can people find you and the business?
I would encourage them to just go to rocketstation.com. There's lots of great information there. But anybody, our development team, if they're honest and sincere about this process, whether you're ready to hire a VA or not, what we will do is we will spend 30, 45 minutes with anybody who wants to know more about this. They're honest and sincere about these concepts. We're happy to provide whatever value we can for anybody that's listening to this who wants that. So if you want a free, no obligation, no strings attached discovery call to just understand how these concepts could apply to you in your business, if you're like, hey, outsourcing makes sense, these concepts make sense, but I'm not sure how that would work for me, then just email our dev team. Greg Brooks he's director of business development. His team is the one that does all this. They're amazing. His email is Brooks, BROKS @rocketstation.com. Tell them you heard the podcast, and they'll take great care of you. And that to me is the most valuable thing I think we can offer, just some of our time to help anybody who is looking for a little bit of help. Other than that, the website, we've got lots of great resources at rocketstation.com, and you can also contact us there directly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all your time and all the insight. Everyone, please feel free to give me a shout out if you have any feedback you'd like me to pass on, or if you have any comments, definitely let me know. And Robert, thanks again.
I really appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. I love the show, so I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. There you have it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please, if you got anything out of it, definitely, number one, contact the guest and let them know. You give me feedback as well if you'd like, or you can rate it and review it, which will really, really, really make a difference and just be something that I will be incredibly grateful for. Thank you very much for listening, and just get after it. You got this.